I'm Christan Griego with Griego Mouthpieces, and today I'm with Ian Bousfield, and he's made a trip over from Bern, the Bear City in Switzerland, to work on some instrument stuff and check out some mouthpiece stuff. I always get like a list in advance of things he wants to try, and it's like, can you bake this? Can you bake that? And so we get in the kitchen and we make a few mouthpieces and a few things. And so thanks for being here.
Yeah, great to be here. It's like a second home. I mean, yeah, he's absolutely right. He's sort of like in the week before, he's like, Christan, could you make me a pink trombone, perhaps, with, and I'd like a mouthpiece with 3 holes in the side. So I was thinking of all these ridiculous things to try. And so I always make you work really hard before I get here. But I wanted now to turn the tables on you, because this is supposed to be an interview with me, but I and many other people are a big fan of yours. Can you talk about your philosophy of instrument design? Where are you at the moment? What are you trying to do?
I'm trying to play long tones, and
right,
and it sounds so ridiculous, but I focus on the sound right now, and at other times I'll focus on response. Other times I'll focus on articulation, but it always comes back to this marketplace where so many people are around, you've got to be really good.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah,
or to be exceptional. The opportunity to be good isn't enough anymore.
It's a very saturated market, isn't it?
Yeah, and for players too. And so everyone's looking for. I always equate it to cycling. Marginal gains matter.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm looking for a lot of times 1 or 2 or 3. Like on this trip, I think we've taken a 5 to 7% step forward with your instrument.
Yeah.
And for that to happen is honestly not one thing. It's a couple of years of work, finally putting all the pieces together, and you have to have kind of a vision.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. I mean, I just had an interesting experience a couple of weeks ago because I went to play in La Scala. And I don't normally play in orchestras, but that was kind of a bucket list thing. I wanted to go and play in La Scala, so I went to do that. And it was very similar to playing in Vienna. It's the most similar to the Vienna Philharmonic of any other orchestra that I've played in, because the priorities are the same. It's communication, music, sound, style, and then everything else. So, maybe occasionally a bit of the intonation, a bit of the rhythm, but the heart and the soul and I get a little bit the impression that what you're trying to do is, when you work with a player, you're trying to enable them to become themselves and make their sound and create their musicality.
I'm always looking for what that person needs to sound like within their body form. And I kind of have this ability, and this will come off weird, but is it like an empath, where you can tell when somebody's upset in the room.
Yeah.
Or you can tell when somebody's happy in the room. You can feel the emotion. I can feel the tension in their sound as if I'm the player.
You can physically feel it.
Yeah. And like when I worked with you the first time, you kind of said, I felt like you were in my head.
Yeah.
You said that to me. And I don't really disclose that a lot, but a lot of times if somebody has tension in a part of their body, it'll make me physically uncomfortable.
When I teach, I feel my sort of like approach to teaching is based on when someone plays in front of me, my body almost feels the way I think that theirs must be feeling. And it's okay, if that was happening to me, what would I want to do?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I kind of equate it to the decades I've spent working with incredible musicians. They would tell me how they felt when they're playing, and it got to be a point where I just could recognize it in the sound, in the tonal colors, or in the lack of projection, or whatever it was. It could be too open, and then they're going to fatigue really fast. And so right where I'm at right now in design is looking for intuitive instruments, where when you pick it up, I actually picked your 4147 up, and I played through an entire Bach cello suite.
Yeah.
And I don't think I missed a note.
No.
I probably played out of tune. Yeah. That's just me. But it was more intuitive, and I'm looking for, as I'm going up and as I'm going down, that the face can stay just neutral. Because I find so many times if we have to have a different set for every partial, that's going to be more fatiguing.
Yeah.
And like lifting weights or doing any parlor trick, you can get where you can do it.
Yeah. Yes.
But to have freedom, and be like, I always looked at players like you, of course, Christian Lindbergh, Joe Alessi, You just did your tenor project, and I'm always watching these things, and I'm watching the face on video, and I'm trying to emulate those things myself, because that's how we become better players. But trying to stabilize and just have the instrument channel us with the least amount of effort possible, then you stand a chance when you add in the articulation and when you add in the other things, which are added workload.
So there's a technical engineering language to a feeling. So you can listen to someone play, and you can get that feeling and know technically within the design of an instrument what needs to be done.
Oh yeah, the biggest one is I want it more open, and I'll actually go to a smaller venturi in the lead pipe or a smaller throat in a mouthpiece, and it allows the player to relax the face, and it feels more open because workload's less.
Yeah, you're working with someone who you can feel keeps wanting to shift, keeps wanting to put in a slight mini embouchure break, and you don't think it's necessary. What change would you make, or is that variable depending on the player?
Well, there's yes, it depends upon the player. Sometimes a player they've shifted for so long that they just automatically do it, and a lot of times when people are here, I'll ask, can you actually just do a gliss across that on the partial without changing your face?
And of course they can. Yeah.
And then when they do, then I know that the instrument is capable. They just have to be willing to make that change and have their life be easier. And that's a tough thing when you've done X amount of work for your entire life. Yeah. And so a lot of times, And so I'm looking to see, and right now I break the instrument down into these long glisses across the partials, and just watching the face to make sure the workload isn't increasing to a factor that they can't support it or control it.
Yeah. And you're going to reach a stage with some people who come in for a fitting where you're going to say, okay, now the only logical thing we can do now is change your mouthpiece, because we need to change the balance of everything.
Yeah, there actually have been times. Most people that are here, they know I don't like to switch mouthpieces at the appointment. I want to build the instrument to their mouthpiece, let them acclimate for 6 months, and then we assess. That's my preferred way of working. But there are times, if there have been some mouthpieces that have such a terrible backboard that it puts a terrible spin or a color that is just not pleasing. And if I let them leave the room with that color, they're going to go back to the studio, to their orchestra or wherever they're performing, and people are going to be like, so you just got a new instrument. And if there's a fault in the mouthpiece, I'm very quick to diagnose it and then shift it. But then I'll try and stick within the same parameters of that mouthpiece. If it's 1.020, like a Bach 4 or whatever cup diameter, I'll try and keep it the same so I'm not messing with the aperture. Because if you start messing with the aperture, certain people are very sensitive and other people aren't. And so I'm very conscientious when it comes to that I don't want to affect too much. But if there is a fault in the mouthpiece, absolutely. I'll just say that's rubbish. It's time to move on.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's shocking that, the technology available in the 1920s and 30s, when a lot of the standard models of mouthpieces were designed, was very, very limited. And now what's available to you as a mouthpiece maker, the technology that you can change so many different things. It always astonishes me that people would play on basically what's effectively authentic original instrument.
Well, and that's why whenever I started my mouthpiece company, I invested heavy in equipment. You've been to my shop. And there's a few CNC shop lathes around, and we don't touch them. It's one and done. It comes off the machine complete. But the backbores are single pointed. What this means is from the design standpoint, I can go in and change part of the taper without having to change the entire tooling. Back in the day, they'd use a forming tool. And we actually just for the first time did it with trumpet mouthpieces, which is tough because you have a 20-to-1 ratio. And we actually made some custom tooling to be able to do this when we're prototyping, to find what we absolutely need. It opens up the world as far as there's infinite possibilities within just writing the G code to be able to do and prototype within minutes without going, well, I wonder if I think we should. And it used to be with a form tool, it was either farther in or smaller.
Exactly.
It was just, and that was it. Now we have so much more control, and that's what I'm excited about is pushing the boundaries within technology to realize what is possible.
when I was in my 20s and I was already in the London Symphony Orchestra, I went to the legendary Phil Parker's shop in London, and I was paranoid about this aspect of a certain piece of music. I was trying this mouthpiece and this mouthpiece and this one, and maybe I need this, maybe I need this. And Phil Parker sort of used to sort of walk through just float through the shop. He was like 92 or something at the time. And he said, "What's the problem?" I said, "Well, I'm having trouble doing this." And he said, "I think what you need is some practice." Yeah. And do you ever reach the stage with someone where they say, "I'm having trouble with this," and you have to say, "Well, I'm not sure I can help you with that."
I have studied quite a few faces over the years.
Yes, right.
And I've gleaned a lot of information. And a lot of times when people are coming in, they're looking for a solution to a problem they may not even know.
Right.
And so, like for me, it's G above the staff. I hate that note. And when I practice, everybody has a certain note. And so we're always looking for improvements in certain areas.
Yeah.
And so at times people are very courteous. They'll be, "That's me." And you've heard me whenever playing. If I do something, I'm like, "Oh, that's me." Yesterday, you did that. You're playing like, "Oh, that's me."
Yeah.
And we all have that moment. But yes, there are points. It's like, if you work on this and you try this, do
people ever come to you for advice? Because you've had everybody in you, and not only have you had, it sounds very glamorous, all of the illuminati of the trombone world in here over the last nearly 30 years. Not only have you had them there, but you know their strengths and weaknesses, and you know what they've done. You've seen them grow. You've seen them work through hurdles. Do people ever say, "Christan, I've got an audition coming up. How does it sound?"
Absolutely.
They do. Oh, that's great.
People come in for adjustments all the time. I have one coming up, I think the 21st of this month, where a person's been advancing, but we're struggling with just, and I say we because I feel like I'm part of this.
Right.
And I'm vested. And I've always hung my hat with helping people get jobs.
Yeah.
And I am emotionally invested.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they're not just a customer, they're a friend.
Yeah.
I'm a trombone player first.
Yeah.
And so it's like working, and if I hear something, I'll actually change, and I don't take auditions. I don't have, so at times I'll work on things that other people, and then we can discuss.
Yeah.
I've talked with you about things. I've talked with, of course, Joe. I worked with him for 23 years. I've talked with everybody, and I've stolen a lot of information. But I do find some certain things that like American style players will struggle with versus European style players.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to travel the world and hear these different approaches, and then be like, well, maybe you need to find out who you are rather than trying to be something you're not.
I had a conversation with Thomas Lubitz from Yamaha in Europe. I had a coffee with him.
You had a coffee with him?
I had a coffee with him, yeah. Well, he had the coffee, I had the tea. He had the coffee. We're in
He's like, I have coffee.
I've got tea. And he said, "I still think that 681 that we made in the early 90s was a good trombone."
Yeah.
And I said, "Yeah, the problem was I just didn't know myself at the time. I just couldn't say what was me and what was the instrument, and I just had to kind of walk away from it." And he said, "But you were first trombone in the London Symphony. How can you say you didn't know yourself?" And it's a lifelong process to really understand yourself as a player, and it's a constantly evolving thing. So you say you've stolen a lot of things. Mm-hmm. That's one way of putting it. Another way of saying is, well, I've grown and developed and learned, which is, that's the difference between certain types of people, certain types of player, certain types of teacher, and instrument developer. There's those who know everything by the age of 30, and there are those of us who know we will never understand it, but we've got to keep trying.
Yeah. So there were some aspects of some actually vintage Edwards and Getson trombones from the 90s that recently I've been searching for. I've been searching for this feeling again,
right?
And this approach of being able to just flow,
uninhibited, just
flow, just being able to just but relaxed, so you can get a big sound rather than a compressed oinky sound. Oinky is a terrible word, but
no, I think trombone playing is going through a little bit of an evolution where trombone players are in general working less on pushing and more on just relaxed and releasing the air through the instrument, because we know we get a warmer sound if we do that.
Yeah.
So we need an instrument that's going to react in that way.
And so hearing you yesterday tell me, well, what were the two things you said? It's I've never played a more open instrument.
Right.
And
at the same time, being sort of like railroad stable. Normally, there are, and I'm not going to name any brands, it's not necessary, but you'll know what I'm talking about. There's certain instruments that are just really stable. You're locked into the notes. And normally, in that case, the sound is very focused and slightly on the smaller side.
Yeah.
And then there are those that are incredibly warm and, and you've got, you're floating around all over the place, but you're not stable. The one that we worked on yesterday was the first time, and I was really confused, because when an instrument is that warm and that free, I expect to be able to just float up and down the register with incredible flexibility just without even thinking about it. But then it's like, I'm really locked into each harmonic,
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, this is incredible stability.
But that's when it's hard to miss a note.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With
having that stability within it.
Yeah, with the instrument that I've got now, it is possible to miss a note, but it's not easy.
Yeah.
And I have to be quite tired. And that, I think what we're looking for, and you're probably looking for that with everyone that you work with, is, okay, it's on me now.
Mm-hmm.
The instrument works for me, it suits me, it's neutral.
Yeah.
And now it's about me.
That neutrality is so important. I remember in the 90s, we would spend so much time just trying, and if as you're glistening slowly down, if the sound went whoop, it got smaller.
Yeah.
It was no longer neutral. If it went whoop, same thing.
Yeah.
And so I've actually come back to that.
Yeah.
And I'm revisiting that.
Yeah.
And if you come in and I'm warming up, you'll hear me glistening a lot, and I'm listening.
Yeah.
Well, so many times we practice without listening.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest thing when people are here, is playing and listening to yourself. You're not used to it.
Yeah.
And it's so, if you'll practice less if you just listen more.
Yeah.
And so I'm constantly listening.
Yeah.
Constantly.
Where do you see the direction of trombone design going? What do you see the next 10 years looking like? Because we all have our memories of, the impact that Edwards made on trombone design in the 90s, and, the new things coming along.
Well, it's funny. The best rotor, the newest fad, the newest innovation is something that was patented in like 1870 or 1880. Right. And it's like, I'm now the old guy yelling, at the clouds. Everything's been done. There are, the thing that we can improve upon in the brass instrument world is tolerance. Making instruments that are consistently good. I'm playtesting every single 41, 47 that leaves, because I want to know. I actually have the compression of every valve, F side and B flat side, written on a card, and I look at it.
Wow.
It actually comes in from my factory at Griego, where the rotors are just machined.
Mm-hmm.
When they're air fit there, they come in on a list,
Yeah.
and I can see all the numbers of the compression. I can see the compression after when they air press it, separate machines, but I want to validate between the two.
But we want some variation in manufacturing, don't we? Because we want some variation in outcome.
That's the thing people never talk about. So an instrument comes through with a lacquer imperfection. What happens to that? Well, we strip it.
I take it home.
Yeah, we strip it. We recolor buff it, which is light buffing, but it's still buffing.
Yeah.
There's variance.
Yeah.
There's always variance within a hand-built instrument. It's impossible to get rid of that.
And we're going to want varying degrees of resistance within so it's going to suit one person or not the other.
The compression can be adjusted through a lead pipe and or tuning slide quite easily.
Yeah.
And I've gotten to where if I'm working with somebody between the mouthpiece lead pipe combination and or the tuning slide, I can pretty much adjust any instrument to where it feels correct. Now, if it's the right sound for that person, that's different. That gets into the resonating quality of the bells.
Yeah.
But I look at the bell as a difference.
I was going to say, how frustrating is it to spend your life in this room with people that think that the material of the bell is everything in trombone design?
Well, we all, talking about obsessive earlier, we all obsess about certain things at certain points in our life.
Yeah.
You did too.
Absolutely.
So did I. And I've made lots of mistakes, but we learned from those and we grew. But at one point you'll come in thinking, I'm totally focused on mouthpiece strip. And then all of a sudden it's just a lead pipe and you're like, oh.
How many times have I come in here and said, Christan, it's I need the lead pipe. It's just what, and you'll say, okay, here's a new tune. It's like, oh, wrong again.
But a lot of times it's learning for that person, within that setup. Well, I remember back when we did this, and well, okay, but it's a different, it's a totally different structure or a different soup, if you will. And so I don't know where we're headed. I think after COVID, there was a terrible loss of quality in factories because there were so many layoffs, and some people came back, some people didn't. There was a loss of knowledge. And now when you see just, that scares me, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of tolerances between inner and outers, hand slides, pistons and casings across the industry.
Yeah.
And so we really buckled down at Getson and at Edwards, and we've had discussion after discussion about how we're just focused on quality.
Right.
And ensuring that the term professional is.
Right.
Because if you can't make a living with it, it's not professional.
Right.
And there are instruments that are out there that it's just a marketing term, and that's a drag, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I think that a professional instrument should have the spirit of that person in it, not the spirit of the company.
Yeah.
And I've always pursued the sound and for that person rather than whatever. I don't think I have the sound that's right for you.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's always what's refreshing about working with you is at no point do you reach this feeling of like you're saying to me, I think what you're looking for is.
No.
You're always trying to read me.
Yeah.
And think, right, what do you need? Well, how can I enable you to do what you're doing? But I think one point that's really important for all of those people who are interested in trombones, trombone design, which trombone players are design nerds anyway. We've got boxes and mouthpieces and all kinds of things, is how fortunate we are as a trombone community to have a company allowing you to be who you are. I don't know any other company in the world that says, okay, we've got this obsessive perfectionist guy here who doesn't know everything about trombone design, but wants to learn. Let's let him run. And the Getson family just let you sit in here and mess around with stuff until you get there. And every company should have that. But they don't.
I made a lot of mistakes along the way, and that's how I learned.
Yeah.
And
yeah. I mean, I think the person, it's the same as intonation. The person who thinks they're in tune all of the time is the one who causes all of the problems, It's the one of the, it's out of tune, maybe it's me. It's like always looking, what can I do better? What can I improve?
I'm fortunate to work in a family-run business.
Exactly.
I grew up in small towns in Clovis, New Mexico, which is a town of 25,000, which is far bigger than Elkhorn. Elkhorn's 7,000, but I love small towns. I love small communities. I love access to the cities when we need to, and I'm able to travel the world and work with players like yourself. It's a dream. It's a dream for me, and to be able to have some longevity. And when I've made these mistakes, I wasn't fired.
Right.
They let me work through them and explain, and I was able to learn.
I think the Getson family has really embraced that philosophy of like, we're going to try and grow, we're going to develop, we're always looking for the next improvement. And to do that, we may be going to have to make a few mistakes, And no laboratory experiment works perfectly the first time, does it? There's always a few explosions on the way.
Well, and that's the thing. As I've discussed with you, I study historical, as do you.
Yeah.
Instruments. I study everything. I obsess. We both brewed beer at one point. We've had a lot in common along the way, and we're both we both absorb a lot of information.
Yeah.
And I think as musicians, we naturally do that in a practice room. But then if you, and I've always told people, if you do this, if you put the amount of energy it takes to play trombone or trumpet into anything else.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, 100%. Incredible.
You'll be fine.
Yeah.
You'll be fine.
I got to tell you, we've talked, Christan, we're both obsessive personality types. Just for your information, while I was practicing a bit this morning, he made himself a coffee. I watched him weigh the coffee beans. We're just like that, and when you apply, when you apply that detail to trombone design, great things happen.
Yeah. And so even when we got go, no go gauges this morning for lead pipe, so we can confirm what we're going. And that's, I think I'm hoping, and that's why I'm doing a lot of these videos, is I'm at a point in my career where everything I've learned, I want to get out there, because I think that there's always been some person or guru or somebody that knew and did it a certain way, and then it gets lost.
Yes.
And then the instruments tank for a while. And I want instrument design to continue to improve well after I'm gone. And whether it be here or elsewhere, at least we have a reference of information, whether it be on lead pipes, gaps, all the things that I've been going over, because it is nerdy stuff. It's not for everybody, but there's going to be somebody that pays attention and gets it, and then they're going to be able to further the trombone and trumpet and French horn, and it's all the same. It's all the same.
Absolutely. I think that's a good place to decide to go and have some lunch, don't you?
I didn't have breakfast.
Neither did I. I'm ready for lunch.
We're going to go. Ian, thank you. Thank you so much.